Hi, and welcome to Hoffman's Hot Seat. I'm Tom Hoffman with One-to-One Media, and I'm here at PegaWorld in Orlando, Florida, the customer conference for Pegasystems, and I'm joined by Alan Trefler, who's the founder and CEO of Pegasystems. And today, Alan and I will be talking about a book that he's working on called Customerpocalypse. And we'll talk about the impetus for the book and some of Alan's thoughts about it. Alan, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Glad to do it.
So Alan, tell us about the book. What was the driver behind working on this?
Well, as we've seen the sort of technology landscape evolve, it's clear that it's frankly not meeting the needs of the clients that are out there. The customers of large organizations are being left behind. And increasingly, the people inside those organizations are just awesomely frustrated because we're still doing things in antiquated ways, and there are a whole variety of cultural and technical issues inside companies. At the same time, we see a number of major demographic shifts in which people who interact with companies, the new generation of consumers, we call them Gendy here, really are in a situation where they're looking for companies to love, but they're finding many more that they demonize. They're finding that they're unfulfilled by their relationships, and as technology continues to advance, we think that this rift is going to get, well, more and more severe.
Yeah. So Gen D doesn't necessarily refer to millennials per se. It could be customers who are unsatisfied in their relationships of different demographics.
Well, it's actually in many ways, I think, almost a post-millennial culture. The Gen Cs were the connected generation. Gen D is sort of a generation that supersedes that really is characterized by wanting to feel that they can discover things on their own. So if you're marketing to this generation, you've got to make it so they don't feel you're in your face. They don't feel it's obvious. They really want to feel like they have a level of control and that everything is sort of a bit of an adventure. So the D stands for discovery. But the other two sides of it, and the other two Ds that come along, is if they don't like you, they're much more inclined to demonize you. They won't just quietly leave or put up your company sucks site. They'll actually go and conduct active campaigns to undermine the business. So this notion that discovery is critical is really very different than previous generations, which were comfortable being marketed to. Here you really need to almost set up a situation where they are surrounded by the things they want to see, but are frankly not aware that the table is being set for them.
Right. It's an interesting point. I know we've seen examples of companies that have been taken on by their customers if they make a mistake. I think JetBlue is a good example where when they had that Valentine's Day massacre a few years ago, there were some disgruntled customers that came at them and were upset with the way they handled the situation with canceled flights and so forth. But then you had loyal customers who went on Twitter and Facebook and other channels and were defending the company. So I guess if you can build that level of trust and loyalty from your customer base, it can work both ways.
Well, the Gendy Customer actually has both characteristics. I think that's exactly right. On one hand, they want to demonize if they are hateful, if they find a hateful event has occurred or that's something that they think undermines their standards of conduct. But on the other hand, they really want to find customers that they can have a rapturous relationship with. Customers that they feel echo their values, and they will step up to the defense of those customers. So it's a much more passionate engagement model than in sort of history, where it was much more, I would say, transactional. And that creates all sorts of opportunities, but it also creates all sorts of risk. This idea that on one hand you've got rapture, where they sort of devour the products of the customer, and on the other hand you have demonization, where they actually will go and try to trash them. That's, to our mind, what this discovery generation is about.
I know in the book, I've not had a chance to read through all of it, but I know in the book that you mentioned that customers don't necessarily want a relationship with companies, and they also don't want to be managed by companies as well. So if I'm an executive for a company, what are some of the things that I should be bearing in mind that customers do want from us?
Well, you have to be aware that they do want great service, and that does include figuring out their needs. However, what they don't want is to have it paraded in front of them. There's a level of subtlety that needs to be brought to the picture, a level of competence, a level of effectiveness, all of which are missing from a lot of traditional marketing. So this requires marketers to really up their game, and that's where technology can help. That's where really being able to bring together data analytics, and process is the way that you can both, frankly, do a better job of laying out what they'll want, allowing them to discover it, and then facilitating the interaction so that it's a really, really good process through which they buy.
Can you also talk a little bit about how this is going to level the playing field, if you will, for companies that are unable to handle the demands and expectations of customers properly?
Well, I'm not sure that it will level the playing field as much as actually create even more differentiation. I think you're going to find there are whole collections of firms, some of which are well-known brands, that are going to fall off the wagon now because they don't have the right technical infrastructure, they don't have the right culture. They are still thinking in terms of the millennials and Gen Z, and they're not realizing that this is this subtle but potentially very, very disastrous change afoot. So I think you're going to find a real opportunity for new entrants who get this to be able to steal a march on the existing firms.
But there's also, and that's a good point, but I suppose there's also opportunities for companies that are entrenched that can still turn things around and make dramatic progress.
I think that's very true. I think that if they can leverage their strengths and in many cases pull back on some of the traditional practices, understand that without agile technology they're just doomed, and be in a position where they get the marketing culture and the technology culture to work hand in hand, those companies do have a great opportunity to actually leap forth ahead of some of the even newer entrants.
Can you point to examples of companies that you look to as leaders in this space that others should look to?
Well, I think there are a number of firms that are doing a great job of understanding how you need to build the right sort of interaction model with your clients. You're building a relationship on their terms as opposed to your own terms. If I take a look, for example, at American Express, which has understood that they need to change the culture of service. They need to make themselves appealing. And they did a terrific job, for example, of upgrading their view of their service providers in their company from being agents in a call center to being customer care professionals. That's how they refer to them. And that's how they expect them to behave, and that's how they do behave. And as a result, they've just won their 6th consecutive J.D. Power Award for being #1. It's that sort of cultural change, coupled with the right technology, we're glad to help them with, that I think enables these organizations to do a better job.
Yeah. And I understand that this is a work in progress, this book. So are you still looking for feedback from people on the book itself?
Very much so. So this was a pre-release to a select group. We have a couple thousand that are going out. And we're very much looking to get this story enhanced, tuned, and once again, this is all about real-time feedback. So looking forward to hearing your comments, Tom.
Okay, thanks. I look forward to reading it.
Thank you very much.
Alan, thank you.
Take care.